And so too the Talmud, but where the source confirms our biblical identifications and provides additional evidence supporting them, we think it is of value to quote the Talmud. So the Talmud also agrees that these verses in 49, Isaiah 49, are applying to the lost ten tribes of Israel. The Talmud, Yerushalmi, Sanhedrin, and also Midrashim, they all quote this verse where in Isaiah 49 verses 8 to 9, so said the Lord, in a time of favor I answered you, in a day of salvation I helped you, and I'll watch you, and I'll make you for a people of a covenant, a Brit Am, to establish a land to cause to inherit the desolate heritages, to say to the prisoners, go out, and to those in the darkness, show yourselves. On the roads they shall graze, and by all the rivers shall be their pasture. That's what it says. And this is what they did. And they colonized these areas. And how did they do it? Both in North America and in Australia and elsewhere, by taking prisoners, by sending their prisoners to there. At first, when North America was established, the different groups who had trouble staying in the Western Europe and in the British Isles, they moved to North America and they established their colonies for religious reasons, for political reasons, each group having its own motivation. And also they sent to their indentured servants, that is, people who usually lacked money to pay for the passage, so they had the passage paid for them, the passage from England to America, and in return they would work for a certain period. At the end of their time of working, they would go free, and they would often acquire land and build themselves up. Or in other cases, they were criminals. And at that time, there was a lot of poverty, and the conditions were much more primitive than they are now. And they were draconian, that is very severe punishments for the lightest of crimes. And so the judges, not wanting to put people to death for stealing a loaf of bread or something similar, would sentence them to be transported to transportation. So they would send them overseas, where they would work for others for a set period of time, and at the end of that time, they too would be free, but they had to stay where they were. After that, there came the American Revolution in 1776, and this arrangement was no longer feasible, was no longer operational, but the judges kept on applying the sentence because the alternative was too severe to apply. And so these prisoners were sitting in hulks, that is, old ships, and prisoners on the ships, and the ships had nowhere to go. So they sent Captain Cook around the world to find a place far away, and he came to Australia and he recommended it, and so they set up colonies in Australia, and to Australia they sent their convicts. The convicts would live there, work there. There were also people who had money who invested in the region. They had farms and estates and sheep herding, and the convicts would work for them a certain period of time. At the end of that time, in some cases, the convicts would receive plots of land of their own, and other cases would at least be free to work for wages. And that is how they built up their civilization, both in North America and in Australia. So this is what to free the prisoners, speaking of freeing the prisoners, to establish their land, to cause to inherit desolate heritages. After that in Australia, after about 60 or so years, they discovered gold. It was just at the end of the California gold rushes, so people from there came over to Australia. People came from all over the world, and there were people scrambling to get to Australia. It was no longer a punishment, so they stopped sending criminals over. But the beginning had been made. A kickstart had been effected. And this is what the Bible is talking about, what Isaiah is referring to. They shall graze, by the roads they shall graze, and all the rivers is their pasture. And then he says, behold, these shall come from afar. Afar, the word afar is frequently applied to the lost tribes, especially those in the west. And behold, these from the north and from the west. Remember, the land of Israel is in the middle of the world, especially as far as Europe is concerned, and to the north and the west of the land of Israel, at the British Isles of Western Europe, and also North America, and these shall come from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. The land of Sinim is sometimes explained as referring to China. China is known as Sin in modern Hebrew. Also in medieval times, China was known as Sin. And so that is how it is sometimes understood, but is actually referring to Australia and New Zealand, as we will show. In the Vulgate translation of the Bible into Latin, Jerome, who consulted with rabbis when he was making his translation translated land of Sinim as Australia, the land of Australia. And the land of Australia means Southland. The land of Sinim in the Aramaic translation is referred to as the Southland, the Great Southland. And so the people who lived in Australia before the white man came, so it's quite interesting, they were Aborigines, and they all had this very similar culture. They walked around virtually naked, and they used boomerangs, and they were nomads, a very low rate of culture as far as we know, as far as we understand. They all had similarities, cultural and ethnic similarities between them, even though a study shows that they were from different areas. Nevertheless, some of them did come from Sin, did come from China. Others had been in Egypt. We also find in ancient Egyptian pictures of nomads in the desert, who were also dark-skinned and used boomerangs. Also the dog, the wild dog of Australia, the kangaroo, the wild dog of Australia, the dingo, is said to be similar to the Canaanite dog, which is found in this region. And also the Aborigines of northern Queensland and in the Torres Strait between Australia and New Guinea. They practiced mummification using the very same methods as had been used in Egypt in the 1100s, and were only used for a set period of time. And these exact methods were employed by the Aborigines in that area to mummify their dead. So this indicates that they had some contact with Egypt at some stage. And Sinim often identified with the Canaanites, with a branch of the Canaanites. You had the flood. In the flood, Noah and his 3 sons were saved. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The son of Ham was Canaan. Canaan was both the name of a forefather of 12 sons and the name of one of the sons. So this can cause some confusion. When you say Canaan, you might use it as a generic term for all of the tribes of Canaan, or for a specific tribe within them. At all events, Genesis 10 verse 15 says, Canaan became the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Evites, the Archites, the Sinites, the Arbadites, the Zamarites, and the Hamathites. So one of them is the Sinites, and these are identified with the Sinim, who apparently populated Australia and may have been the ancestors of the Australian Aborigines, or at least some of them. The Talmud and the Midrashim said that the land of Sinim is one of the areas in which the lost 10 tribes would be found. The Yalkut Shimoni, another Midrash, says that in the land of Sinim would be found the sons of Rehab, son of Cani, son of Can Rehab. Rehab, the son of Can, were in effect descendants of Yithro. Jethro was the father-in-law of Moses. He was a Midianite when Moses was in Egypt. Before he delivered the Israelites, he fled from Egypt after having saved an Israelite and killed his oppressor. He had to flee. He ran away. He came to Midian and he settled in the household of Jethro, who was a priest of Midian, and he married a daughter, one of his daughters. And later, Jethro joined the Israelites when the Israelites went out of Egypt. And he stayed with them, and he and his clan were attached to the Israelites and participated in the conquest of Canaan from the Canaanites and the requirements in the land of Canaan. In the book of Numbers, we have the prophecy of Balaam, the pagan prophet, concerning the Israelites. And Balaam prophesied that the Canaanites, that is, the descendants of Yitro, would be together with the lost 10 tribes who were taken into exile by Assyria, and they would be together, the lost 10 tribes, in their place of exile. And they would return with them. We find descendants of the Canaanites in Ireland. That doesn't mean that all the Irish descend from Yitro. A certain number of Israelites amongst the Israelites in Ireland descend from Yitro. Rabbi Moshe David Valley also speaks of this, and the same as the 10 tribes are destined to return, so are the people of Yitro to come back with them. And we find amongst the people of Ireland, in Jewish sources, references to the children of Moses being in the British Isles, together with the Rechabites, who are part of the Canaanites. And we find several documents concerning this belief from very early periods. Also, we have a study, a scholar named Vilan Uvia, Eric Tubukain, a correspondent of ours, pointed out this source to us. It dates from 833. And based on place and ethnic names, they found Canaanites, the sense of a Kenny, in Northern Ireland, in Tyrone, Armagh, in Donegal, and part of Derry. Irish sources refer to them as Kinney, that is Canaanites. And they were amongst the Israelites who were in that area. And from that area came many settlers of Australia, possibly 20% or even more of the white present-day inhabitants of Australia are of Irish descent, have Irish ancestors from Southern Ireland, and in addition to that, very many also descend from people from Northern Ireland. And they, therefore, would have been amongst the settlers of Australia and New Zealand, related to Rehab, who was one of the Canaanites who was settled there. We have New Zealand. New Zealand is composed of the North and South Island. A large number of Scotsmen settled in New Zealand. Its population is about 5.5 million, closely related in culture and in psychology to the Australians. They have a shared history between them. They were very important in the First and Second World Wars. Australian and New Zealand warriors helped liberate the land of Palestine from the Turks and enabled the establishment of the State of Israel, the British Mandate. And they too apparently are part of the land of Sinim. We derive this from biblical quotes. biblical codes show patterns in the Hebrew text of the Bible that that so many letters, for instance, a passage may be speaking about the Holy Shabbat, and every seventh letter in these passages spells Shabbat. So that is one example. There are hundreds, thousands of examples, much more complicated than that, but all having a certain logic to them. And so there is an indisputable truth in these codes. These codes very strongly indicate that both Australia and New Zealand are the land of Sinim and are areas of Israelite settlement. A good message to the descendants of the Lost Ten Tribes also confirms what we are saying. May the Lord God of Israel bless you and help you and guide us all. Thank you.